Look at my flappy arms.
Look at I've got like 17 chins.
So. You don't even want to know
beep,
what my boobs look like anymore. They're like half empty sandbags.
Mine too. Oh, we're on.
Oh yeah, we're recording. A beep and a very fine, good beep to you today.
Us on our sandbag boobies.
Welcome to Mothers of Mayhem, an extreme horror podcast. LaRocca is going to be here today, and I'm dying.
Okay, so you guys have to understand, this is Marian's Chandler Morrison and John Wayne Cominali.
It is.
In one.
I am
so
not
how dorky
lie.
I looked during both of them, it's her fucking turn.
Oh, prepare yourself.
It's gonna be so awesome.
I mean, Christina and I, we get hype, and I think even a little nervous every time we go to jump
every single time
to a Zoom room with anybody, any of the authors we've been blessed to talk to this season. But I believe that we, as your hosts, and even you as our listeners, would be bald-faced liars if we did not admit that there's at least one author out there that creates art that just resonates with us as individuals in like a way deeper, more emotional or meaningful way.
Yeah,
so
without a doubt.
We all have our person.
Like my new one is Ryan Harding. Like he's like, I'm devouring his books as fast as I can, as fast as possible.
I still have Night Stalkers on my bedside table. I love Triana. I don't know a lot about Ryan Harding yet, and you're so excited about him that I'm like, I need to get through these other things so that I can get to this book.
And spoiler, he'll be on season 2.
Yes, we're gonna have, and that's another reason I need to start getting into them, because I can't bear not being knowledgeable.
Being part of the cool kids.
Right.
So while we talk about horror a lot, obviously extreme horror podcasts,
right?
Everything goes beyond that.
Oh, so much further.
You know, so some of my favorite non-horror, because we don't really talk about the non-horror side of our reading that often.
Right.
I mean, everyone knows.
I think it's all very related to why we choose the people we choose within.
Oh, without a doubt.
Horror.
Because there's certain elements of their writing that speak to horror.
Yes.
Charles Bukowski. Everybody knows I'm a Bukowski fangirl. Can't help it. Don't care. A lot of people call him a misogynist, and I'm like, well, then you're reading it wrong. Because he's really not. You just have to read him.
That's how I feel about Hubert Selby.
Oh yeah.
Hubert Selby Jr. Some people absolutely hate him, but there's something about him where I'm like, just be real. We're being real here.
Yeah.
The world
just
is
don't
horrible.
talk about him, because I will punch you in your vagina, and not in a good way. Jean-Paul Sartre, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, because it's either Sartre or Sartre. I don't know. It's French.
I think it's
so you can correct me. Like, Sartre, I don't care.
Sartre, but you're on the right track.
Maybe Sartre. I don't know. Something.
Ooh, that sounds French. Beautiful.
But if you have ever read No Exit or No Exits, it's his play based in hell. And my favorite line is, hell is other people.
Oh, yeah. A classic.
Yeah.
A classic. Yeah. And you know, during this Mercury retrograde, I would just like to reinforce how very true that is. Because I am feeling it.
And then my last one is A Little Life by Yanagihara.
Yeah.
Very difficult name. That I almost would say that's more of a horror book than most of our horror books that we talk about on here. Well, I guess I should have done that with horror.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, because I think people expect horror to have a little bit of that surrealism to it. But we've talked about this before, how the most terrifying, most disturbing, most horrifying books we've read are the ones that were based in reality. That's why John Athan kills me. That's why Living Dead Girl by Elizabeth Scott destroyed me. That's why Last Exit to Brooklyn by Selby is horrific. Requiem for a Dream. And then let's not forget Jose Saramago's Blindness. I read that one coming right out of the pandemic lockdown, and I was like, this was a terrible time to read this book.
I have that. I need to read it.
Horrible time to read this book. And then what's fascinating about that is that the follow-up to that book is all very politically based. So it is the second half of what happens from the political viewpoint following a national global pandemic trauma. Saramago is a genius. Oh,
well, that just moved up my goddamn
PBR. When you read it, please tell me what you think. Oh my God, I wish I could send you my copy. I wish I could just like push it through the computer. You have it? Blindness?
Yeah, I've had that for a year and a half, probably.
I have to give mad props to Brandon Baker on TikTok for bringing that book up at one point in time. And I was like, that sounds interesting. And I read it and I was like, oh,
that sounds fancy.
Shit.
Sounds fancy.
But it's that real world horror and it terrifies me the most.
When A Little Life is no joke. Like,
no.
People call it trauma porn. And I'm like, do you not understand that bad shit happens a lot to one person sometimes? Like their entire life just fucking sucks. Like,
right.
It's not trauma porn, dum-dums.
And honestly, from a mental health perspective, what we've learned is that people who are traumatized early on tend to face greater and greater traumas in more and more greater and greater frequency throughout their lives. It almost becomes this pattern. And the universe has been traumatizing humans since we evolved the ability to have consciousness. It's just now, after millions of years, we're finally realizing how it actually affects us.
Wait a second. Damn it. What is happening here?
I think my first horror author actually was Jonathan Swift. Reading Jonathan
A Modest
Swift,
Proposal.
A Modest Proposal in high school. I mean, hello, tender is the flesh. Come on, let's just be honest. But that was my first.
Who doesn't want to eat their babies?
Right? And well, that was my first introduction to satire, and the concept just sucked me right in. It stoked this fire of curiosity in my brain. It led me to Ambrose Bierce. He led me to Richard Connell. And then eventually I end up with Kurt Vonnegut, and he rocked my fucking brain. Like Breakfast of Champions was the first one I read. I was probably 14. It validated all of those quiet, unsettled feelings I was starting to have about society, the way it functioned. And then I moved on to Cat's Cradle, which inevitably just ended up being my favorite.
So funny. So funny.
And then later in life, I actually gravitated more towards an author named Sherry Reynolds. And I read The Rapture of Canaan, and this book might sound familiar to a lot of you. Maybe yes, maybe but it was part of Oprah's book club when she was doing that on her talk show. And that's kind of embarrassing, but please don't judge me. I was like 18. But that book was a revelation for me in regard.
So what was it about?
It's about a young woman named JL who grows up in a very closed religious community. And she ends up pregnant. And it was a manipulation. She ends up somewhat shunned, chastised. There's a lot that happens, but it's very much about religion, grooming, gaslighting, manipulations, gender roles, the culture of cult. And
so would you say it's like a Handmaid's Tale, Scarlet Letter type of deal?
Far more realistic. I would find then, like, this is stuff that is happening in closed communities all the time because the manipulations are so quiet and she's so young. But there is a triumph in this story, and the way that she connects with her child as a mother, even at 18, it just it's a lot. And so then I was interested, and I went and I found a couple of her other books. I found Bitterroot Landing, which is about a woman who is a survivor of intimate violence and control, domination, domestic abuse, and a gracious plenty, which has some of those themes, but is also very driven in grief and loss and has a supernatural element to it. I cannot recommend them strongly enough. I think Sherry Reynolds has probably fallen off most people's radar, but these books, I think to this day are their quiet treasures. Cannot recommend enough.
I'll check her out.
You're a crazy poetry person. Who was your favorite poet?
Bukowski. And then if you guys have ever read, oh my God, and of course I'm going to freaking blank on it, Richard Cory by E.A. Robinson. Okay, so spoiler, if you don't want to know about it, don't listen to this part. So Richard Cory is like this super cool guy, and he like everybody loves him, and he has like the greatest life. Everything's great, right? From the outsider's perspective. The last line of the poem, and one sunny day, Richard Cory went home and put a bullet through his head. Right? Don't you fucking tell me people poetry isn't awesome.
Why do I love that so much?
Right? And you know, I love when people are like, poetry is boring. Okay, first off, no, it's not. Secondly, that one, check out The Vine by Robert Herrick.
God.
He was a priest or a monk, and he wrote a poem. Guess what the vine is, Marian?
Is it a penis?
It's his penis.
Ah! So glad that I'm so in vibe with you. I knew exactly what the vibe.
It's his penis. So like, and I took a lot of poetry classes in college. Yes.
Oh, I love it. I love it when we explore the sexual repression of religious orders.
Yeah. But I will say one of my favorite modern day poets, like in indie horror, I have two. Obviously, The Professor.
Oh, well, yeah, come on.
Mike Innenbuck. Okay, Mike fucking Innenbuck. Pick his stuff up immediately. He actually has one coming out in August. And I have it, and it is... it is. I'm not going to fangirl. This is to Marian's day to fangirl.
Oh, no,
today.
girl. Every day is our mutual day to fangirl.
Every day is a day for Christina to look like a complete asshole.
You know, I'm glad you brought up like your favorite modern poets, because I very much, because of my own personal history and everything, and my own personality journeys and stuff like that, obsessed with Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton at one point. You are a rabid note taker and annotator, but the only books in my collection that I have ever done anything even close to that are the ones by Sylvia and Anne. And those are basically like prompted journals for me. If you open those books, you'll be like, oh my God, Marian.
Which one?
Oh my God. All of them.
She wrote Daddy, right?
All of them.
Is that the title of it, Daddy?
I believe that might be
Plath?
Anne Sexton.
No, I think it's Plath. I think Plath wrote something called Daddy. Let me double check, because I
have the massive collections, and I just buried myself in them. But of course, that I have like a bell jar and ones as well, like her journey through New York City and misogyny and society's standards regarding what a female should be and look like, and diet culture and all that bullshit. And that was the 1950s. Yeah. Okay. Daddy.
Yeah. Daddy and Lady Lazarus.
Lady Lazarus.
Those are the two I was thinking about.
I rise with my red hair and I eat men like air.
Num num.
I love you, Sylvia.
Right.
And you know who my modern day Sylvia is?
Who?
It's Eric LaRocca. Quite honestly,
Nice.
I don't know if any of you have, probably those of you who are listening. Oh, you have it. I only have it on Kindle. He is This man, he is a modern confessionalist poet. So if you have read Fanged Dandelion, you know this man is coming at you the same way Sylvia and Anne did, the same way Dorothy Parker would. It is
Dorothy Parker. You can lead off.
I love my Dorothy Parker. His I was like babbling to Christina. Like his prose is elegant and poetic and gorgeous and dreamlike. It's real and yet so surreal, and it just leads you down these paths where you're forced into these emotional spaces where you have to find your own interpretation and you really have to work through your own stuff. And I think that's what makes his horror so impactful and so relatable. And yet it's like life. It's horrible and it's horrific, yet there's so much elegance and beauty.
There's even beauty and elegance in the trauma that we go through, unfortunately.
Yes. Well, crisis always equals opportunity. Trauma equals opportunity for growth or decline. So there is always so much available to us depending on which trajectory we take it in. And his books are so much like that.
Yeah. And I want to back up just a second. I'm not saying that like there's something beautiful in rape. So don't anybody come for fucking me. Okay. Oh, I don't want to hear it. That's not what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No.
Because somebody be like, well, Christina, you said.
Well, it's the core of the matter is that crisis equals an opportunity for growth or decline. Mm-hmm. Sometimes both at the same time.
Oh, without a doubt.
Depending on what kind of support we have, depending on, our journey and our process and our coping capabilities and what our baseline was and everything that has come before and what we expect to come ahead. It is very subjective. It is incredibly individual, and it takes decades, if not a lifetime, to work through some of it. But you will grow and decline through all of it in various ways. And his books really pinpoint that and really highlight that. And
it gives you that validation.
Yeah. So LaRocca is one of the first people we've brought on here where I feel like we're kind of floating in this nebulous zone of horror, but not horror.
No, you're 100% right, because like things have gotten worse since we last spoke. It borderlines because it is horrific at parts, because I was listening to the audiobook and oh my God, whoever narrated that, chef's kiss, people. But I get it.
Yeah, you can see why what happens. And the whole while you're going, oh no.
You're like, please don't. This isn't going. Oh, this is going where I thought it was going to go.
And it's happening because of pain. Mm-hmm. Emotional pain, and that's where the horror is. It's not in any of the ick stuff that happens. It's in that driving. It's the part of her iceberg that's under the water.
And it is a big fucking iceberg.
It is huge. He's just
Are you ready?
For Eric LaRocca, he is a prince.
Are you ready?
You know what I'm actually really the most excited for? I can't wait to see what he's wearing.
I know, right?
The absolute drip on this guy. When I say a prince, he is a fucking prince. He is a prince.
I'm like, I am never going to be like 1/100th that cool ever.
Christina.
Are you ready?
He's the actual Archelian galaxy that Orion the cat carried in his collar in the classic 1997 film Men in Black, starring Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones, which was based on an actual real true story. And Eric LaRocca was the heart of the universe in Orion's collar.
Why don't you go ahead and bring him in? I'm not doing this today. I'm not doing it today.
First of all, how dare you? I'm feeling like you're questioning my knowledge of the history of the universe and the galaxies that exist therein.
Never.
But
I would never do
secondly,
that.
I am not going to say that I don't want to talk to Eric LaRocca. So, okay, we can do it. But first I have to anxiety pee. So hold on.
Me too.
We'll be back. Woo! We have with us in the Zoom room my very own modern day Sylvia Plath. No pressure, Eric LaRocca.
None whatsoever.
Wow, I love that. I absolutely adore that. Thank you.
My God. You will go back and listen to the intro of this show and you'll be like, this woman is a nut.
No, I appreciate it. I love all the love. It means a lot. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for doing
Yes.
this. We know
Yes.
we are just tiny and small. So we really appreciate you taking the time to
Of
spend the
course.
afternoon with us.
Yeah.
Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Let the listeners know about you, stuff that you may have out now, stuff that you might have coming up that they could be interested in.
Yeah, so I'm Eric LaRocca. I am the author of Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke, which came out through Weird Punk Books last June. It's now out of print, but it's being re-released through Titan Books in September of this year, called Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke and Other Misfortunes. So it's like a collection of, containing the original novella and then 2 other short stories that have never been published before. So that's coming out. I also independently released a book just as like a treat for all the people who have been just so wonderful supporting me, called You've Lost a Lot of Blood, which was in March. Oh, nice. You have a copy. Awesome.
Yeah,
Oh
we
my
both
gosh,
do.
you both do. Cool. Yeah. Oh my God, you've got all of them.
It's not stalking, it's supporting.
I love it. No, I love it. That's so cool. Yeah, so You've Lost a Lot of Blood is available now, and 50% of the proceeds from that go to Trans Lifeline. So that's, something very near and dear to my heart. And then in June, I have We Can Never Leave This Place coming out through Journal Stone, which is like a short novella. So
My God.
She will be talking your ear off about that one.
So we're going to kind of hit that one towards the end of this first gauntlet of questions, because this book, I already said in the review that I did several months ago, this book is a masterpiece. To me, this book is a masterpiece, and there's a million reasons why, but I am so excited for other people to get a chance to read this, because this is a journey. And it is gorgeous and horrific. And I haven't read anything like it.
thank you. I appreciate that a lot.
You're
Thank
so
you.
well. You're so thank you.
I should have like a fangirl meter.
I know. I'm sorry. And we'll get a little bit more into. We're gonna break some of that down here as we go through, y'all. So if you don't mind, I don't want to take up all of your time today, so I'm just going to go ahead and kick it off if you're cool with that.
Fine. Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome. So like I already said, I kind of identified you as my modern day Sylvia. I love her. I love Anne Sexton. I love Dorothy Parker. Confessional poetry is my jam. And is it okay if I read something from your introduction to this gorgeous thing?
Oh yeah, Thanks
Dandelion.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I had never been afraid of myself before. I lived in a permanently nervous state for much of my childhood. I thought I had imagined practically every horrible scenario of what could happen to me and my loved ones. Imagine my surprise at the age of 26 when I considered myself to be the cause of catastrophe. Imagine the depth of my horror when I contemplated how easy it would be to swerve into oncoming traffic or to plow over an unsuspecting herd of pedestrians. I had been afraid of everything and anything, but I had never imagined myself to be capable of doing something truly horrible. It was perhaps the most frightening moment of my life, wondering if I really knew myself. Super. And thanks for the 100% all consuming relatable feels, friend. I read through that introduction and I was like, oh, it was like I had an arrow shot through my chest. I just, it resonated with me so deeply. And as you continue through that introduction, you explain that the creation of this collection was truly an act of therapeutic catharsis for you.
Mm-hmm.
And would you be willing to speak more on that concept and how you, within your work, confront the frailty of the human psyche?
Yeah, it's so weird hearing those words like back to me, even though like I wrote them, it's just like very, it's it's so amazing to hear that that it resonated with you.
They make me cry.
Yeah, no, it makes
because
me,
it's so relatable.
yeah, it makes me emotional too. Cause like when I wrote Fang Dandelion, I was coming out of just like a really bad era of my life. It was just really bad. And, like, not to get like too personal, but like I had to go to like the ER, like, for how upset I was, like realizing that like maybe I am capable of doing something horrible, you know what I mean? And it just like really scared me. And I, finally sought help, and thank God I did. I eventually went to see like a therapist, and we started doing like really great work together, and was prescribed like specific medication that really really helped me, and medication that like I'm still on that really, you need to, and that's kind of like, I feel like that's such a stigma too, like with people who are on medication. It's like, well, why, there's like judgment. But when I was talking to one of my therapists about it, he was like, when a tree regrows like one of its limbs, like you need to support it, like it needs to be supported in such a way that it can grow correctly. And that's like the same thing with like the human mind, you have to nurture it and really be kind to yourself, and just do all the things that you can to make yourself as healthy as possible. Mental health is just very, very important to me. And I think that's why I explore so much of it in my work, because it's something that I know really deeply. That's something like I feel, and I know how to write those characters. Like I know how to write people who are troubled, people who feel like they're on the outside looking in, people who feel like they're just, totally, they're just, they feel like, they are the cause of their own destruction and their own, difficulty in navigating the world. Like I identify with that, and I hope that readers resonate with those stories. I don't try to like do it in a shocking, sensational way. I hope I don't, because I'm really just trying to put a voice to people who are struggling with mental health problems. And I'm not trying to really sensationalize anything, because these thoughts are very real. Like when you're experiencing them, they're very, very real, and they're terrifying.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think that's why I, write so much about it in my work with just mental health in general. Like I have a story in my collection, The Strange Thing We Become, called Bodies Are for Burning, which is very much like, in that realm of what am I capable of hurting someone? And like, am I capable of doing something really awful to something else? You know what I mean? Yeah. And that story was very difficult to write, but it was also like very effortless to write, because it's just something that I know innately, you know what I mean? So I try to I definitely try to be like tender and thoughtful when I put these stories out there, and I hope readers connect with them, essentially.
So, yes, I will validate that readers absolutely do connect with them. I have been a mental health professional for 14 years, and I was pulled to the field because of my own challenges that I have experienced and grown through. We continue to still grow and change and evolve. But I would say that you and author Matthew Cash, goes by Maddie Bob Cash, are currently my two absolute favorites when it comes to addressing the true horror of mental health challenges without being provocative or overly
stereotypical.
sensational.
Yeah,
stereotypical. You guys both have this way of presenting it with an elegant vulnerability that really takes people in a very relatable space. And I think those of us who both work in the mental health community as well as use the community for support really find that to be very comforting. It's a very safe, and the funny thing is you guys write horror, and yet it creates an incredibly safe space.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, because that's what I yearn for that, and I love that. I want it to be a safe space. I've had some people say that, like, I probably shouldn't look at reviews, but I do look at reviews sometimes.
How are you not gonna? Honestly?
Yeah,
I think every author is like,
some people say that, like, the stuff is like very bleak and very dark and just not, it's almost like too much for them, but I respect that and I understand that. But like, it's reality for a lot of people,
we were just talking about that.
Christine and I were just saying that, like, oh, it's bleak and it's dark and it's horrible. Have you met life?
Yeah. And the thing is, like, when I was going through like the really bad, like my really bad, like depressive, like, anxiety era, like I don't know what else to call it, because that's what it felt like. It felt like just this period of time that I was just not really me. When I was going through that, the whole world around me like changed, the whole, like, everything became really terrifying and everything became like really frightening. And that's just, I understand that entertainment is supposed to whisk us away and, carry us to other lands for adventure and fun, but I prefer narratives that kind of reconcile those really grotesque feelings inside to make me feel like I'm not as much of a monster as I think I am.
Right.
Show me the beauty in the pain that I'm experiencing or the pain that I have seen others experience. Show this to me in a way that is the reality of the horror that it is, while still that dreamlike elegance that it actually has while you're going through it.
Right.
Make me feel not alone.
You and Maddie Bob. Yeah, exactly. Make me feel not so isolated.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing with horror that I really respond to, is like watching it and reading it. I don't feel isolated anymore with my thoughts, and I feel like connected to a lot of people now. And even just writing it, like, it's so cathartic to write it. And
it's cathartic to read it too.
Yeah, it's so cathartic to read it and just kind of realize that you're not alone, and that these thoughts and these the horrible things do happen in life, and it's okay. That's just life,
Yep. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Christina, you want to hit him with the next one?
I will. Since we're kind of talking about things have gotten worse since we last spoke and things like that, and reviews, both Marian and I loved it. I actually was at the commissary, which is on base. It's like an on base grocery store. And I was listening to it while I was shopping, and I would like gasp. I read, but I wanted to hear the audio. And so I was like, and I was like, And like people were looking at me. I was like, you do not want to know. You don't want to know. Trust me.
Tapeworms.
They asked me what I'm listening to, the Bible on audiobook. And while this book has been celebrated by critics and fans, it does tend to generate very polarizing, strong opinions. You've probably seen them. One of the biggest issues is that some people tend to think that the relationship between Zoe and Agnes falls into madness and obsession too quickly. But Marian and I both have our own reasons for feeling this pacing is justified. But how do you, sorry, I'm looking at this. How do you like to speak to the particular concern that's addressed by certain readers with the pacing being too fast?
Yeah, no, I definitely hear that. And I've seen like a lot of the negative reviews for not just that, but I mean, there are people that just hate the book for other reasons, you know. But as far as the pacing goes, I mean, I'm coming at it probably from just a certain angle from being born in like, you know, the early 90s and growing up like in chat rooms on when social media didn't really exist. Like it was just basically like the computer, like internet was just very new growing up and kind of
ICQ, Mirabilis ICQ.
No, what's that?
It was a chat thing that we would use. And that's really what it was. Like you would chat with random people and build these relationships with them in one night. And then all of a sudden they were your best friends.
Yeah, that's the thing. I feel like I come from a you know, time when relationships kind of did develop very quickly on I shouldn't say social media, like, you know, just over the internet in general, you know, chatting on AIM and all of the other you know, all the other chatting software. Like, you know, you would log on and just see who was there and who you could chat with, and you kind of just like, that's kind of how I came into like my sexuality and just kind of discovered that I prefer men, and you know, that's just the way it was. And I definitely had conversations that went like very, very quickly. And I think a lot of the people who have that concern with the book, I don't think they're maybe like they're coming at it from the same perspective that like people who were in the early chat rooms. I think they're kind of younger, you know what I mean? So I think maybe that's where it's coming from. I could be totally wrong, but I've had so many friends and so many just so many friends that have had relationships develop very, very quickly online, and like when we were younger. And
yeah, me too.
Me and my husband.
Yeah, and it's just, I feel like, I don't mean the queer community is obviously not like a monolith. Like we're all very different. We shouldn't ever lump everybody into the same experience. But I think it's I'll say this, I think it's a very human connection, a human desire to want to connect with another person. And I feel like based on the character Agnes's mental state, kind of, you know, Things Have Gotten Worse is difficult to read in a lot of ways because it's not traditional prose. We're only given what the editor of the book wants you to receive. So like, you know, you're only getting these chat rooms, you're only getting these like posts online, but you're not really seeing the bigger picture. And I feel like you might have to like read through the lines and kind of pick up on the subtext of what's really going on. And I think some people, when it comes to reading, I think some people like are a little lazy, you know, like
how many times I said that?
Yeah, yeah. Christina's right there with you, pal.
Yeah, I don't think they clue into like subtext, or they don't really pay attention as much as they should. And I'm guilty of that too. Like I'll skim sometimes, and like I'm like, oh, am I really reading this? Like maybe I'm not. And then I'll go back and reread it. I'm like, oh, I missed that. You know what I mean? So I think the reason why there is that kind of upset with the way the relationship progresses, I think it's a bunch of different factors at play. But I think it's primarily just the fact that some of the readers like don't understand really how queer relationships developed back in like the early 2000s.
Sure.
Because social media just wasn't a thing.
Right.
You know?
Right. I've tried to come in on several platforms like TikTok or Instagram, where when I see this particular concept communicated, and it's hard because, you know, on TikTok and IG, you only get so many characters to use. And when you're going to come in and start talking about this stuff, it's hard. But I just want people to think about the fact, like, when somebody feels so isolated and they have this hole inside of them that feels so empty, and all of a sudden there's this shining bright light of a person right in front of you, how easy is it for us to just grab that person and shove that round peg into that square space?
Yeah.
Or that square peg into that round hole, because we are desperate for that connection. We are desperate for that love. We are desperate to not feel alone anymore. And especially in the time of the mid to late 90s, when all of a sudden the whole world had been opened to us. We could meet anyone from anywhere, maybe never in real life, but still these were other human beings that we were able to fill our voids with. And I think you're very right that if you weren't, some of it I think still prevails. But especially at that point in time and in the 90s with the queer community, you're absolutely right. It was not an easy thing to talk about. You guys were not getting the support, the social support and that you needed. And so you were all leaning into each other. And if you had an emptiness that needed to be filled, you were filling it with one another.
Yeah.
So I found yeah, it gets me every time. I think you have to really focus on that different perspective.
Yeah, I think they're just, to kind of negate it and just be like, oh, well, it develops too quickly. I think a lot of readers are doing themselves a disservice, because the book speaks to a lot of themes and issues just in the queer community in general, like these sort of power dynamics at play between two women or two men, and how easy it is to kind of lose yourself and your identity just in another person, you know. And that's not even just a queer issue, that's universal. You know,
100%.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, in Fanged Dandelion, I know that there was another piece of work that came very quickly and then went away. I'm going to ask you about that later. But in Fanged Dandelion, you wrote a poem focused on self-loathing and self-injury, and it's called Things Can't Get Much Worse. Is there any correlation between that one and your now, what has pretty much, because it totally went viral on TikTok?
Yeah.
So this is now your iconic novella.
I love
things
that.
have gotten worse since we last spoke. Like when people think Eric LaRocca, they think things have gotten worse. So is there any was there a genesis in that poem that may have eventually led to the creation between Things Can't Get Much Worse and, oh, actually things have gotten way worse since we
Let me tell you the story.
Or am I totally off base and just fangirling way too hard and seeing Easter eggs that don't exist? Because
nobody has
so
picked that
good
up.
at that.
Nobody. It's so funny that you say that, because like nobody has picked that up who has like read Fanged Dandelion. But I was like outlining Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke while I was writing Fang Dandelion. So I was like writing my poems, obviously, I would write like one a day probably throughout this like period of time. But I was also like outlining what would eventually become Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. And I remember, coming to that poem and writing that title. And I was like, that would be like a great title for something. And, I was kind of developing this idea, of these two women who meet like in a chat room. And the initial like rough concept was, in my mind, like one of them is responsible for the other's death, even though they've never met before. And that was like the hook for me, you know? But yeah, there's definitely like a correlation between Fang Dandelion and Things Have Gotten Worse, in that the themes that I explore in Fang Dandelion are also kind of present in Things Have Gotten Worse, because it's about like a toxic relationship and just like the things that we do to one another that are horrible, and then the things that we do inside our mind, you know?
Because in that poem, the speaker is basically talking about how mom and dad are in the house doing daily things, and then he fantasizes about dad cutting himself while preparing vegetables, and then all of a sudden his brain is like focused on hurting himself. So he had this fantasy about dad hurting himself, which then triggered him to want to hurt himself. And how those two things are, dad's cutting of the vegetables was the trigger that led this person to want to hurt themselves. And it's very similar to that relationship between Zoe and Agnes, where she's like, you love me, I will kill myself for you. Like, I'll do anything for you. Yeah. Simply because you put it, your presence planted it in my brain. So I just thought that was very interesting. Thank you for validating me. I'm not as nutty as I thought I was.
You just did a Christina.
Yeah.
You just did a Christina.
And in your honor, I'm going to tab that shit, Christina.
Tab it, bitch. Tab it. I'm like the queen of tabs.
He's a tabber and an annotator, and I am not. But I will
love
do
it
this time for
I'm
her.
a dork. I'm a dork. Can't help it. Hey, $55,000 in student loans have to do something. So I tab it.
Oh my God, student loans. That's a horror story. Yeah.
Right? That's like everyone's got PTSD from signing those loans.
Yeah.
Things have definitely gotten worse since I last talked to Sally and Eddie.
Right?
Natalia.
Right.
All right, girl, hit it.
My turn. I'm trying to figure out which one I want to do. So that's why you see me look over, is because we have questions and I'm reading them.
No worries.
And if you see me looking this way, I take notes the whole time. So
nice.
Yeah, told you. Dork.
Welcome to Nerd Town.
Population 2.
Happy to be here.
Welcome. Now it's 3.
Yeah, now it's 3.
It's a very small group. We're a little like commune.
Let the cult commence.
Right. And I'm like the worst person. I'm like a cult follower. Well, like even my brother's like, you would so be sucked into a cult so easy. And I'm like, I am gullible. What can I say? So getting back on track, can we talk about these covers?
Oh my God, dude.
Can we just talk about the covers?
I know. They're so beautiful.
The work of artist Kim Jacobson, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Jacobson has become a part of what makes LaRocca Books stands out as a LaRocca book. And it's often noted as one of the driving factors that acts as a major decisive factor that convinces them they have to have your book. I'm not gonna lie, I saw this cover, saw it was you, boom, 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 into the cart it went.
Yeah, I can get this on Kindle, but why would I not want to have
Boo.
this? Like, people on TikTok constantly were like, that cover, that cover, that cover.
Right.
And it drove so many people
I know.
to buy the freaking book.
Yeah.
Like, Genius move, my dude.
It really was. How did you find Kim, and what about their artwork felt right to you?
That's a great question. So when I was working with Sam at Weird Punk, basically we were like pitching ideas back and forth of what we wanted the cover art to be like for Things Have Gotten Worse. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, I need this to be iconic. Like, you know, the title to me like was so just, I loved the title. I loved the book. I still love the book. And I really wanted it to be something like very, very special. So we kind of went back and forth with like a few different designers that work a lot with like indie horror fiction. And unfortunately, none of them could work on the project with us. But it actually worked out a lot better. You know, so Sam just told me one day, he was like, why don't you go on Instagram and just look for like really, you know, gruesome, grotesque paintings and like artwork, you know? And I started scrolling on Instagram one day and I came across the work of Kim Jacobson. And I was immediately just so mesmerized by their use of color and just how like in your face gruesome and gory some of those paintings were. And I finally came across one that's called Passing Oxygen, which is the cover of Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke.
Oh my.
And I just locked eyes with it and I was just like, that's the one. Like, I know that's the cover of this book. And I sent it to Sam and Sam was like, absolutely, like that is definitely the cover art for us. I think it was like the most he had ever spent on any cover for a Weird Punk book, to like license
Paid off
it.
in the end.
Oh,
It
right.
Definitely paid off in the end.
I think that was a good choice.
Yeah, no, it really was. It was a great choice. But Kim has been just like such a delight to work with. And I knew that I wanted, when I independently released You've Lost a Lot of Blood this year, I was like, I know I want Kim to license one of Kim's paintings for the new cover art. And yeah, just it's just been so great to see how like responsive people have been just based on Kim's artwork, you know. Like I feel like Kim and I are kind of now like forever like intertwined with
I think you are.
with our careers, you know. Which is great because I absolutely adore their work. And you know, Kim is just such a sweetheart. And yeah, so that's kind of how it came to be. And then so We Can Never Leave This Place is actually a different artist.
I wondered, it's like a Blay, B-L-E,
Blay, yeah. And Blay is from Greece. And you know, another just really class act, just a really great person. And I came across that painting on Instagram as well. And you know, shout out to Instagram, seriously.
Right?
Like,
I'm like, dang.
yeah.
Word.
And I feel like, you know, with Things Have Gotten Worse, I was like, oh, like I've really set the bar now for myself. Like I really need to do something just as cool, hopefully maybe a little cooler. And I came across Blay's artwork and I showed it to my editor at Journal Stone and she was like, oh my God, absolutely. And so it's kind of like my aesthetic now, just like these really gorgeous paintings that are super disturbing as like cover art, you know.
Well, see, with Things Have Gotten Worse, to me, because I love paintings, the cover tells so much about the story because she's faceless, which online you're faceless.
Yes.
And then she looks like she's floating, like part of her's floating away. So she's losing a part of herself.
Mm-hmm.
So like little things like that, along with this, I'm like, that's fucking perfection. Like I would have thought, honestly, that you commissioned it after you wrote the book, is how I felt. because I was like, man, this is like way too perfect. So when you were telling me that, I'm like, holy crap, talk about the stars lining up. You know what I mean?
Oh, and then
Totally.
when
Like,
you
holy-
highlight the fact that the book is called, or the painting is called Passing Oxygen.
Oh, that
Yeah.
just, as a nerd,
It's
I'm
almost like it
that's
was meant
perfect.
to be, because that's essentially what they're doing, is they're
Mhm.
passing a certain kind of life force to
Mhm.
one another, as devastating as it may be. That is the
Mhm.
kind of impact they have on each other.
Oh,
And that
totally.
just takes it to a whole nother freaking level.
Right?
I'm curious to know, do you remember off the top of your head what the name of this painting is? Because of all of the
Yes,
covers,
I do.
this
Yeah.
one fits this book like,
Yeah.
wow.
You're gonna laugh when you hear the title of the painting, because it really captures like the spirit of the novella. The title of the painting is called Fever.
Oh my God, stop.
Isn't that perfect?
It really, it's like providence for all of these. Like they were
Yeah.
truly meant to be. You
That's
can't,
crazy.
the correlation's too beautiful.
Yeah.
How
No,
lucky.
I know.
Right?
I've been very, very lucky. I've been very lucky. And actually, so I'm working with Clash Books for my like debut horror novel that's coming
Mhm.
out in 2023.
Mhm.
And we were just like going back and forth about cover art, and I kept telling them like, this cover needs to be like the best possible cover we can do. And they were like, well, it seems like your paintings as covers like do really, really well, which is true. Like the cover art for Things Have Gotten Worse did phenomenal. The cover art for You've Lost a Lot of Blood has been amazing. So I came across this other artist on Instagram, and we licensed one of their paintings, and it's going to be the cover art for my debut novel, Everything the Darkness Eats. And I'm just
I
like,
can't wait.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. This painting is like so grotesque and just it's so disturbing, and it's just like perfect for the book. Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't freaking wait, LaRocca.
She's a little bit like, we're gonna see her like
I
go
think-
get in line of Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think the more this conversation has been progressing, I think you're picking up on why I feel the way I feel about your work, you know, both from a personal level, but also from my career standpoint.
Mhm.
Mental health is very important to you. Mental health is everything to me on so many different levels. And so what you do resonates deeply. And I just really appreciate the way all of those pieces go together. So that I think is why I'm such a freaking fangirl about this, because I think it's important.
It is. It's totally important.
Super important.
Especially-
You're one of the ones out here doing it right and beautifully. So it makes a difference.
Especially to highlight and to put the spotlight on mental health, because, you know, like Marian spoke to, I deal with mental health. I'm bipolar. So I don't know what the FedEx I'm going to be in the morning when I wake up. Am I going to be happy, or am I going to be like, I'm not leaving the bed today? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so my children both deal with mental illness
Yeah.
at 5 and 8. And so having books like this, well, I can hear one of them screaming. I don't know. She's probably trying to kill her dad. I'm not going to lie. Captain Mood Disorder down there. It makes me feel good that I can, you know, obviously I'm not going to read those to my children just yet, but they can have access to them when they get older. And I want them, like we've spoken to, not to feel alone. Like I can have these thoughts. I can feel this way, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And so for me, one, you have a lot of symbolism and metaphors and things like that, which again, freaking nerd over here, right? Like let me get my tabs and my highlighter. And then it speaks to mental illness in a way that's not stereotypical and not your, you know, sometimes writers can get lazy with it and just be like, well, this is what everyone sees. Well, no, it's not.
Yeah.
So she's from like the healthcare, I'm from the nerd and the crazy people part.
Yeah, we were
So
talking
very different.
Oh yeah, we were talking even before we started recording it all, and we were reflecting together on how sometimes when we look at mental health in horror, we have a tendency to focus, if we're going to look at it from the iceberg model standpoint or point of view, the story will focus on the behaviors we see above the water, the jagged, the rough, the stuff that's very blatant and objective, whereas you present those things and then you're like, okay, so that's there. Now we're going under the water. We're going to look at the feelings, the triggers, the wants, the unmet needs. We're looking at the trauma. We're looking at all of the driving forces that are actually fueling these jagged behaviors that you're seeing above the water. Right. And that, I think, is where it really gains its impact.
Totally.
For a lot of your readers, because this isn't just about me having mental health issues and looking unstable or looking dysregulated or being dysregulated. This is about what's really going on underneath what you're seeing on my surface. Right. And that's a different perspective we don't see a lot in horror. And I think that's why we both really appreciated it as much as we do. You and Maddie Bob Cash and Paula Ash. She's coming up right. She's coming up right behind you, buddy. I told her, I was like, "You're next on my list, girl. I'm gonna run you through the gauntlet next time."
She's amazing. She's so good.
She sent me her book, and the first thing I said to her, I was like, "You're my next LaRocca." I was like, I got him, and now I got you. The two of you, collecting me. You're destroying me.
Yeah, her book, We Are Here to Hurt Each Other, was just like, oh my God, get out. Just so good.
Yeah, so good. I sent it to Christina. I was like, read it. Well, no, she sent it to me, and I was like, I said to her, please send this to Christina. And she sent it to Christina, and I was like, you have to read it now. Yeah. Well, that's how she was. And she was like, wow.
And that's how she was with we can never leave this place.
Oh yeah.
And I had been putting it off because I was like, I want to read it closer to time when you were going to be on. And then I read it yesterday and I was like, I'm a fucking idiot. Like, I should have read this months ago and stopped being such a spaz.
Books have no expiration date, right? Like books, that's the great thing about books.
And that's one that I really want to talk about. Let's briefly talk about The Strange Things We Become and Other Dark Tales, because this was absolutely one of my favorite single author collections from last year. And so it was a very funny contrast. It was you and Nicholas Robinson with Caution May Cause Ocular Bleeding. And these two collections are so vastly different, but you killed me at the beginning of this interview because, and Christina can verify this, it is on my questions. I literally say, bodies are for burning? That story hit me so hard. It's literally right here in my question. You make me too goddamn emotional, LaRocca. How very dare. If y'all have not picked up this collection, this is out of print now, right?
Yeah, so that's it's out of print, but it's coming back through Titan.
Oh, thank God.
In I think March 7th, 2023.
Dang.
I read it and immediately sent a message to my sister because she also read Things Have Gotten Worse at the same time as I did. And I said, have you read The Strange Thing We Become? And she was like, not yet. I was like, you ordered it. And she did. And then she came back to me. She was like, holy fuck. This is a freaking dreamscape.
Thank you. I'm really proud of that book. And
I hope so.
It's kind of a little it was a little disappointing to me when it was released because it kind of like flew under the radar
Well,
with
you had
like,
this one.
I know. Yeah. And I just like, for everybody that didn't like Things Have Gotten Worse, I was like, oh, please try the short story collection because they're very different.
Yeah.
And it really shows my like I can write prose, you know? But it just like flew under the radar. And then with Off Limits, they had some like changes in their editorial staff, and I was able to get the rights back to the book. And my agent like shopped it to Titan Books, and they were like, no, we want this, like we need to publish this. So
yeah,
I'm excited for it to have like a second life, and I hope it like finds the readers that it deserves, because I'm actually like very, very proud of that book.
oh, you should be. I'm telling you guys right now, if you're listening, when this one becomes available again, this is a do not miss your opportunity collection.
It's actually going to be titled something different, though.
What's it going to be called?
So it's going to be called The Trees Grew Because I Bled There, Collected Stories.
Oh my freaking God. I saw that on your website and I was like, I wonder what this is. I wonder what this is. Because it felt, I knew there was the short story in here of the same title. And I was like, is this going to be a re-release of the collection, or is this going to be an expansion?
I wish I could do an expansion, but like Titan already bought the short story collection. I don't think I can add anything to it, unfortunately. I would, like, I've got so many things just on my computer waiting to get published, but it's
don't tell me things like that.
Marian and I can give you some info on who's taking submissions right now. Oh, we got you. We got you.
We sure got you.
We will help in any way we can.
Also, my email is always open.
I might take you up on that.
You do me great honor. When you sent her We Can Never Leave This Place, she was like, Christina, I guess you just fucking sent me something. And I'm like, I suck at the guessing game. Like everybody on the planet knows that. Yeah. I will be guessing until I die and still not get it right.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. And then you had posted about how you were looking for reviewers.
Yeah.
And I was like, now's my chance.
I love sending stuff out to reviewers. Like, it's the best part of this, honestly, is like that, you know, the relationships I've built with readers. Like, that's really that's what I love, you know. Like, I love writing, but I am like kind of a social person too. So I love connecting with anybody that is really interested in like dark fiction, you know.
Well, that's our listeners,
that's
for sure. Like, kind of know that
you came to the right place today,
right? With the SpongeBob in the background, we're good.
Yeah, and my Squishmallow Mountain.
We're professionals.
Into We Can Never Leave This Place, because I feel like this is a big one, and people. Not a lot of people have read it yet. Some of us who did the pre-order, some of us who were lucky enough to be blessed with ARCs are aware. Oh, and by the way, Jason Nicky, who you might know as Biblio Beard, wanted me to tell you you're a fucking genius. Let's talk
He's
about.
So sweet.
He is.
We are family,
He's a doll.
man. We are family. Christina, you want to ask him about You've Lost a Lot of Blood, because this is an interesting one too.
Oh, I was like, I have another question.
You do.
I'm drunk. Just ignore me.
That's what Drew Stepik would say.
He really would. So your most recent release, You've Lost a Lot of Blood, is one of the first books that we've seen from you that threads into the realm of bizarro horror. What was the inspiration for this book and the way you chose to use both? Say that word for me, Marian.
Epistolary.
Thank you.
I always gotten worse. Yeah, it was very epistolary, but
yeah,
you do a little
standard
here.
Oh, I can't talk, and standard fiction formats to take the reader through their exploration of Martyr Black's internal psyche.
Mhm.
If you need me to repeat that, I can totally do it because I
No,
totally
no,
I am a whiz at editing nowadays.
I fucked that up.
No, I think I
You're
can answer it. So basically, You've Lost a Lot of Blood started kind of not long after Things Have Gotten Worse was originally released, and the germ of that idea like just started kind of spinning around in my mind, and I wanted to write a piece kind of exploring a couple who were serial killers, but I wanted to kind of focus more on their like everything but their killing. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to focus more on the like I knew one of them was going to be really creative and really like kind of sophisticated and just kind of a Renaissance man. Like I wanted him to be like very charming and very just beguiling and also just very creative. And I thought, how interesting would it be if we actually read something written by like a serial killer, you know? And that's kind of where the germ of that idea just originated from. And it kind of just developed from there. And I think I mentioned earlier, but like I knew I always wanted Kim Jacobson to have like the cover art for this book, because I feel like in a lot of ways it's like it's obviously not a sequel to Things Have Gotten Worse, but it's like a spiritual sibling in a lot of ways, like with the same sort of format and just same sort of themes of like disease and decay and obsession and yeah. So I mean that's kind of really how it all began for me. And I was chatting with my manager, and we were just talking about the fact that like basically everything I had up until the end of 2021, like it's now out of print except for Fang Dandelion. And I was like, I really wish like I had something that I could just give my readers to kind of hold them over. And then I was like, oh yeah, I do have this novella, and it's not really the type of novella that I could see easily getting picked up by like a big publisher. It's very like weird and just non-linear, and it's I just figured that it would have like a hard time breaking through that barrier of like traditional publishing. And I was like, I should just, and my manager was like, you should just release something. And then I was like, oh well, I have this. And that's kind of just how it came to be. And I was like, oh, like I'll make it like a charity too, like I'll donate half of it to Trans Lifeline. And that's really just how it came to be. And I think the book has been pretty well received so far. I'm really pleased with a lot of the reviews that have been coming in. And
yeah. I saw comparisons to Poppy Bright's Exquisite Corpse within the relationship between your two male protagonists, but I found it fascinating the parallel between Martyr analyzing his narcissistic interactions with his partner while creating this story about this girl who is unsure if her own mental reality is truly reality, and what level of control does she have in the destruction that's occurring. And plus the bizarro aspect of that really took me off guard. Well, you kind of hit me with that a little bit with We Can Never Leave This Place, because up until that point I hadn't really seen you do bizarro. And We Can Never Leave This Place was the first time where I was like, oh, we've gone into bizarro land here a little bit. And then it kind of was driven home. Now I know other people will be reading it in the opposite order, but I just found that to be very, very fascinating juxtaposition between what he is evaluating within his own head and how he is processing it through this character who's so much more compassionate and loving than he is, yet has these aspects of her personality that are also very narcissistic.
Right.
And very ego driven. So really, really interesting read. Also I hate centipedes, so thanks. They're literally like one of my only insect phobias. I can handle spiders, I can handle most anything but centipedes, man. I can't do
They're
it.
my least favorite.
Don't you show that trash here, Christina. I hate them. And yet for me, of course, because I despise them, that just added to the horrificness of it, because I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
I know, the centipedes kill
fucking
me
robot
too.
Centipedes, man. I can't. And they're indestructible. So since we've kind of talked about we can never leave this place a couple of times now, I did mention you were very gracious in sending me a surprise advanced reading copy of this back in January. I read it in one sitting while on a plane on a flight back from a business trip. And I swear to God, the people sitting next to me were like truly concerned for their own well-being, because I think at one point I was like actively trying not to sob because this child, Mara, this 16-year-old girl, I mean, we've already established I'm a mental health professional. I have worked with too many traumatized children and adolescents, and this was the first time I had seen an author address the way young adolescent brains can really lean into dissociation and use psychotic processes as a survival mechanism, because they do. And it is both a form of psychological preservation and physical survival. This is the devastation of trauma in one of its realest and most impactful forms. And the use of the environmental setting of the war-torn country as the parallel to the brutality of the other internal generational family traumas that are going on here, it just really highlights the way Mara is being forced to survive, and it drives it all home with such emotional brutality. Her experience is very real, and yet it's very surreal. And Christina had a great question. Were you imagining a specific conflict zone when you were writing? Because when Christina read, where did it take you, Christina?
I went directly to World War II.
I went to Syria.
You're right.
Dang.
It was Syria.
Dang.
But at the same time,
like,
I said to Christina, I was like, the people who pick this book up in June, you know where they're gonna go? Ukraine.
Yeah.
It can be Afghanistan.
Well, that's the thing.
It can be Cambodia. Like it can be.
I didn't want to
it's
pinpoint
very
it. You know,
it's very much like that.
I didn't want to label it and make it like a specific place, just because the horrors in that book of war, I mean, they're ever present and they're universal, and you know, we're sadly seeing it in Ukraine right now. And so it's interesting, this book actually began life as a screenplay before it was a novella. So I went to grad school at Emerson College in Boston, and I studied screenwriting. And this was like a feature-length script that I wrote while at Emerson. And at the time I was like, you know, very much, I was looking to places like Syria and those conflict zones, and just, you know, really trying to really understand like what it's like, because, you know, being in like living where we do. We have the privilege of not really understanding what those conflicts are like for so many people.
Yeah.
So, but I knew that I didn't want to necessarily pinpoint a specific location, and I wanted to keep it as just vague as possible. And I was actually doing an interview with Dead Headspace a little while ago, and Gretchen Felker Martin was on. She wrote Manhunt, and she made a really good point. And it didn't really occur to me while I was writing it, but it makes sense now that I'm reflecting on it. When you're a child, you don't really have a huge grasp of like where you are in general, you know, like you don't really understand location and like where you're positioned in the world. So to have everything so vague and just so like non-specific, Gretchen was like, it actually works in a really unique way and a very valid way, because this girl, I mean, she's been abused, she's been completely just, you know, her just totally broken by her mother, who is, you know, just a monster. And but also I shouldn't label her as a monster, because there are things there
She's
that
also a wounded
she's also wounded
spirit. Wounded people wound people. So
yeah,
I get you,
exactly.
like it very much highlights generational trauma.
Yeah.
And when you throw that into that war-torn conflict zone, and you're absolutely right. I think Gretchen was right on the money. When we are adolescents, like our world is our world. We don't see beyond that. Like nothing else exists.
Yeah.
And you feel very much trapped.
Yeah.
So how do I survive?
I mean, I just reflected on my own adolescence and how horrible being a teenager was. And, you know, being a teenager a lot of the times felt just like it was just horrible. Like it was just a horrible experience for me. And I can't imagine the horrors and the horribleness that other children face in some of these countries where conflicts go on. It's just I try not to think about it too much because it's really upsetting, you know. But yeah, I mean, Gretchen, I feel like was very correct in her assessment of just it's better to keep things vague and the way it is presented in the book, because children don't have that understanding of the world.
Yes. Christina had made a fantastic observation regarding the almost Alice in Wonderland-esque nature of Mara's experience. We know that what she's experiencing can't possibly be real. Yeah. This is fantastical. This is something she's creating. And, you know, as the story progresses, we learn more and more and more. But the way already we know this traumatized child is probably developmentally stunted.
Yes.
She is very mature for her age, but at the same time, she's very immature for her age, simply based on what has happened to her. And so she projects these characterized, like these anthropomorphic fantastical animal personalities, characterizations onto the people that come into her life. And they are both fantastical and absolutely horrific, absolutely just horrible. And it almost gives you a new perspective on Alice in Wonder when you think back on it, because we all know that was kind of what he was getting at.
Yeah.
Like this was a traumatized kid, and here is how she processed through all of that. Because if you go further into the books, like there's a lot of mental health stuff there, and the same with Dorothy Gale in the Wizard of Oz series. So that is really, this is almost a new version, a modern version of that Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz kind of take on adolescent trauma, adverse childhood events, and mental health in kids.
Yeah.
So
you got her going. Freaking
good, man. we have taken up so much of your time so far. Let's take a little bit of a break here real quick, and then we're going to come back. We're going to hit you with the rapid fire 4, and we are going to wrap it up.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
Hey kids, looking for a way to affordably access the best and wildest independent extreme horror currently in existence? Godless Horrors is the place to be. Go to www.godless.com to gain access to thousands of extreme horror and splatterpunk books from the genre's best and brightest independent authors. Godless Horrors offers every title in their catalog in a variety of formats to ensure compatibility with your favorite digital reading device. Strapped for cash? No worries. Godless has a fantastic collection of free titles ready for instant download, with other titles in their collection rarely exceeding $3 to $4. Again, go to www.godless.com or download the app and tell them what the fuck you're looking for. Come join the Godless tribe today. Forever delightfully deviant. Forever godless.
All right, we're back. We're back. It is time. It is time for the rapid fire 4. Eric LaRocca.
I'm scared.
Oh, you should be. We're hardcore here.
Oh,
4
yeah.
questions, 4 answers, 0 time to think about it. You need an answer immediately. I like to give people time to think about it. Marian's more of a
I have
do it
no
now kind
patience.
of gal.
I have
She has
no
no
patience
patience.
whatsoever. And if you give the wrong answer, I will be forced to turn you over to Edgar, the bug alien from Hive World, but I love you, so please do good. All right, let's go. That'll
So
make more
first
sense once you hear the intro.
Right. So
Go for
first
it, go for
question. Which of your characters do you identify with the most and why?
Probably Agnes from Things Have Gotten Worse. Just because,
Oh,
yeah, probably Agnes. Just
I
because,
want to
like,
give you a big hug.
just because, I mean, she just desperately wants to connect with other people. And I feel like I spent so much time, like, growing up, like, I was never included really in anything. Like, kids my age thought I was weird and just, like, didn't want to be around me. And it was, yeah. So I think I would identify most with Agnes, just in that, like, we're both very, desperate for that, like, human connection. But, like, luckily I have a very, very supportive partner, and, he's amazing. And, he just is just so, so wonderful. So
He better be.
yeah, no, he's great.
Or
He's
your
awesome.
moms are coming.
I will
This one will
hit-
fly from Alaska.
I will get on a moose and make my way on down.
So is there, I know you're a playwright, you're a poet, you studied screenwriting, like you told us. And now you've kind of found your niche in indie horror and dark fiction, but is there any other literary genre you might be interested in expanding into and giving a whirl?
Well, actually, I have been working with my agent on a novel that isn't horror. It's just literary fiction. So it's just like,
That's my favorite. That's my favorite. Literary fiction is my chicken out.
She's like,
Yeah.
I'm ready.
I mean,
I'm ready.
there's like very dark elements to it, of course, but there's no like supernatural threat. There's no like, it's just people, the story is just about human beings and how we come to terms. I don't want to say too much about it, but it's it's about like death and art, how we reconcile with our death and what comes after, and what we leave on this planet when we die.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna order new tabs. New tabs.
You should have been here when we were recording our intro and going off on Sartre and Bukowski, and I was mouthing off about how much I love Hubert Selby, and we were talking about Yamagahara's A Little Life, and talking about how people are like, that's not horror, and we're like, it's one of the most horrific books we've actually read.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And that's how I would describe that's probably how I would describe this other book. Like, it won't be, I don't know how it's going to be marketed. We'll see what ends up happening. But I would like it to be marketed just as a literary novel. But you obviously can't control how people react to your work, but I would love for it to kind of raise those emotions in people and be like, this is horrifying what's happening, but it's not really horror, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That to me is just really interesting. I love that.
Yay.
Well, I'm gonna start
we're
getting my
prepared.
monies ready, because that sounds right up my alley.
Love it. Great. I'll let you know when the pre-orders go live.
Because Marian and I have both only been in the indie horror scene for like 10 months.
Yeah.
My background is literary fiction and plays.
Oh, cool.
Like, that's my thing.
Yeah.
I own way too many plays to be a sane person.
That's awesome.
I'm a dork.
No, that's great. I mean, I grew up like, I thought it for the longest time, I was like, I just want to be a playwright. Like, I just want to work in theater. And then I went to my master's for screenwriting. But I mean, growing up, like, that's all I wanted to do was write plays. I just, like, anything by Tennessee Williams, like, I just absolutely love him, Arthur Miller, Eugene O'Neill. Like, I just, can't get enough of it.
You said that We Can Never Leave This Place was originally a screenplay, and my brain just like caught on fire. I would die to see that in like this style of animation.
I know.
He's like, you get it.
You get it.
God, if only I could help make that happen, because that would be, I can't even imagine. I couldn't imagine a better way to present it. It just, Christina, hit him with another one, because I'm going.
She's gonna get off on another.
I'm dropping it. I'm dropping into a hole. I'm dropping it. Here we go.
What is your favorite story that you've written?
It depends. I'm gonna say We Can Never Leave This Place, just because, you know, that's the one I feel like we're promoting right now. So I feel like that's the correct answer. But you know, it changes a lot. I really do love the novel that I just finished with my agent. I think that that's some of my best writing I've ever done. But I also do feel like We Can Never Leave This Place is a very good like sampler of like an Eric LaRocca story, because it has that sorrow in it. It has those very like brutal scenes of like depravity. But it's like laced with a little bit of like, you know, fantastical elements. Not that all of my pieces are fantastical. Most of them are like grounded in reality. But when you peel back the layers at the end of the piece, you realize like how grounded in reality everything was. You know?
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna go for this answer. I'm gonna say We Can Never Leave This Place.
It's my favorite. I think I've already established why, but I think after having read everything else that has led up to it, like, you hit a peak here. Like, this is your peak at this point. I know you're probably going to go further. I would not underestimate you 1 second, but this is it in the moment. This is where it's at, dude. Like, it's gorgeous.
Thank you.
Now, if you could co-author with anyone, living or dead, who would it be?
Probably Michael McDowell.
Fascinating.
I love Michael McDowell. His book The Elementals and
Yeah.
The Amulet, and you know, he was openly gay, and his writing is just so sumptuous and just so beautiful. I would definitely, you know, I feel like a collab between us would have been like really major. It would have been really cool. But
Absolutely.
I would say Michael McDowell.
Oh, that is so interesting. That's so, and he has such a sci-fi-ish aspect to his writing as well. So
Yeah.
that's a really interesting, that would be an amazing combination, honestly. I would love to see you hook up with Paula at some point in time.
That'd be cool.
Y'all would destroy me.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
She would be donezo.
Yeah.
Donezo.
So honestly, probably so would Paula. Paula would be like, ah, ah.
Oh, she froze up on us.
Am I back? Am I here?
You are. You are. back.
Okay, good.
You're
Sorry,
back.
my connection's been funky today. So,
That's okay.
Eric, this has been a gift. Thank you so much. We've kind of talked about a little bit about what's coming. Do you want to give people more concrete information about where's the best place to get your stuff? How do they reach out to you if they're interested? What drop dates are we looking at coming up?
Yeah, so We Can Never Leave This Place comes out June 24th. If you order now, though, if you order from the Journalstone website, you will receive it like well before the street date. And you'll also get, if you buy the paperback version, you'll also get like a free digital download, which is really cool. After that, Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke and Other Misfortunes is coming out September 6th. And that's through Titan Books. And I'm going to be doing, I'll definitely be doing like more interviews, and I'm hopefully going to be doing like a little live event in Boston for like the release, which is I'm really excited about that. That we're kind of like working up to that right now with like the publicity department at Titan. Yeah, and then I also have a book coming out through Bad Hand Books in, I think, November. And that's like a novella called They Were Here Before Us. And I'm like so excited about that one. I just saw the cover art for that, like a kind of like a rough design of it the other day, and it looks so, so cool. Yeah, and then after that, The Trees Grew Because I Bled There is coming out March 6th or 7th in 2023 through Titan. But if folks are interested, they can connect with me on Twitter and Instagram at Hysteric Teeth, or they can go to my website, ericlarocca.com.
Yay!
And I wasn't writing fast enough. When is the They Were Here Before Us coming out?
I think either October 31st or like early November.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I'm so excited.
I'm taking notes as fast as I possibly can.
For more information, please follow Eric on Twitter or Instagram. Visit his website for better access to information regarding our show in general. You can always come join all of us in the Mothers of Mayhem official Facebook group. I think Eric even shows up there from time and again when I tag him in stuff like a total nut job. Senpai noticed me. In the FB group, you can find links to our merch store, the ultimate fan community reading soundtrack playlists that exist on YouTube and Spotify, exclusive info, content, and giveaway opportunities, plus so much more. The finale for season 1 is fast approaching. Eric is one of like our second to last person. This should be dropping right like a week or two right before We Can Never Leave This Place hits. So y'all keep your eyes out. You need to pre-order this thing because god damn it.
Yeah.
Also, the Facebook group is the best place if you want to stay in close contact with your weird book moms while we're on hiatus. That's honestly the place to be. Next season, we will be taking a brief hiatus in the middle of things so that I can have this baby. And then we will be back. But you can find the links to our various social media accounts in our show bio. And as always, send your questions, comments, or insults to our email address, momextremepodcast@gmail.com, m.o.m.extremepodcast@gmail. Do not forget to send dildos to Christina. DM me if you need her mailing address.
Please don't do it.
Mill Iron is my best partner in crime with this one.
He really is.
So
He really is.
He really
Butt
is.
fart.
As always, a huge thank you to singer-songwriter Amigo the Devil. Mad props to you on your tour that is happening with Gogol Bordello right now. You're out there killing it, brah. And thank you for allowing us to use your song Hungover in Jonestown as our theme. One last question for you, Eric. How do I get a copy of the original printing of A Bright Enchanted Suffering? Because if I don't, I'm going to die, and I can't find it on eBay or nowhere. And I know it's being re-released in your upcoming hardcover edition if things have gotten worse, but that's like not good enough for me.
So that book is actually, that book doesn't exist. Like it
Shut
never
up!
existed.
I can't handle it. No.
I was independently releasing it, and I put it up on Goodreads, and then right after that I decided to just put it in my Off Limits press collection, like the 2 stories in there. So that book like never really existed.
But is it but we are gonna get that stuff.
It is technically
in the
coming.
hardcover. I froze, didn't I?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Because I already
We can still hear you.
I already ordered the signed one from Barnes and Noble.
Oh, nice.
I can't wait. Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me know that. I will.
Thank you so much.
You've eased my suffering a little bit. Again, we love you. This
Thank
was
you.
amazing. This was a great day for me.
This was so cool.
It.
This was so awesome. Thank you.
Oh, you guys are the best. Seriously, thank
No, you. Uno reverse.
you.
That's going to be our new tagline. Eric LaRocca said we're the best.
Eric
That's our new
LaRocca,
tagline.
Eric LaRocca and Chandler Morrison love us. Until next time, go raise some hell, children.
Make your weird book mommies proud.
We love you guys. Bye.
Death is the punchline. Oh, la, 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 la.